Welcome back to another episode of Let's Build Workspaces with Danielle Urban and Bryan Ossa. How you doing today, Bryan?
Hey there, doing fantastic, and I'm extremely excited for today's episode because we have a surprise. What's a
Yeah,
surprise?
we're going a little rogue. We've been pretty good about planning some topics and sticking to a specific topic, but today's topic is we are each going to share 3 ways that we have seen or that you could do to royally mess up your data in HubSpot.
Yeah.
So this is so exciting to me because we all love a good train wreck.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think this will be more entertaining than our average educational content. So,
Ab- Absolutely. And I love the fact that like we quite literally decided this less than 2 minutes ago. So like we're totally winging this.
don't share our secrets.
Oh, I'm
Um,
sorry.
do you want to go first?
Sure, yeah. So for the first thing that's going to destroy your data, uh, being inconsistent with your property or object type. And
Mm,
this is super, super obvious with things when you go into, in the United States, hey, enter out what state you live in. If you give them a free filled text versus a drop down option, how many different ways are they going to spell your state? Is it
yes.
1, 2, 5, 20? I don't know, and that's a nightmare.
Yeah, that's such a good call out. I think wherever you can create structured data, create the structure is the lesson
Please.
that comes out of that one. Like, do yourself a favor and make everything a drop down or checkbox wherever you possibly can, because you will save yourself so much work in the long term.
Oh yeah.
Um, I
Your
think
turn. Go.
okay. My top one, which you've heard me complain about before, everybody's heard me complain about it, is moving back life cycle stages.
Oh
You will
yes.
screw yourself up so much. And here's why. When you move backwards in life cycle stages in HubSpot, the only way to do that in an automated way, but it kind of functions that way when you do it manually, is to clear the existing life cycle stage. So you're losing the record of the current life cycle stage and everything downstream of that you're moving back to. So if you have someone who's a customer and now they're entering another buying cycle, either because they churned and they're coming back or they're going into an upgrade, if you move them back to like an MQL or an SQL, you lose all of the data that's linked to them becoming a customer. All of those steps, those dates, when you're looking back and trying to understand how long your life cycles last
Mm-hmm.
and what could influence them, and you'll retain a lot of the activity that they did, but all of those dates are just gone.
Yep.
Never mind the fact that you like lose your customer list.
Yeah, and like this is one of those perfect moments where it's like if I had the button, it's just like I could have like Smeagol
Yes.
say like my precious and just say that like hit that a few times. I absolutely would.
Yeah, I will scream this from the rooftops until the day I die because
Oh
I've
man.
seen it. I honestly, probably 10 years ago, I built it, but I have
Oh
since
yeah, we all
learned,
have, of course.
yes, we have since learned it is not the way. So go back and fix it.
Oh yeah. No, yeah, please do. Things move forward, not backward. And if you need to move things backward, build an automation that creates a new thing, and like provide context behind it. It will save you so much sanity in the long run. I promise.
Yeah. All right, your
So
turn.
yeah. All right. So number two, and this one is gonna seem fairly simple, but is often forgotten, and that
Right.
is, I'll just call it naming convention and organization. And so it's it's less about the data itself and more about how you're characterizing said data. Because how many times have you gone into a portal or any tool really and found 3 or 4 or 5 different insert blank, whether that's a property or a workflow or a list
Hmm.
or whatever, that all do the same thing.
And then
And
they
the
fight with
only
each
reason
other.
you don't know the only reason why the new one was created is because the naming convention, like it wasn't named well or effectively or at all. And it's just like untitled workflow 1, 2, 3, 4. And so now I have 3 different workflows that are setting my deal stage, and that's terrifying.
Yeah, they're all fighting with each other and clogging
Yeah.
things up. There another example of that, just to extend this one because big plus one on this.
Oh yeah.
I have started coaching people to not, like, if you're doing a nurture where you want the emails to go in a specific order, do not number those emails. So, like, if you
God,
have
no.
email one, email two, the only reason you should do that is if they are truly a sequential, like, thing that can't exist independent of each
Mm-hmm.
other. So, like, if you're sending out a course, which we're really trying to do a couple years ago, where you like send out an email a day and it's like today is day 1 of 5 and everybody's expecting those emails, great, number those because that will
Mm-hmm.
save your sanity. But if you are just building content and like internally pushing people into a nurture, people's inboxes, I probably got 2,000 emails today in my
Mm-hmm.
personal inbox because it's a train wreck.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but nobody's going to know that you sent email one yesterday. And then 3 months from now, when you need to update your content or change something, you're going to end up with like weird versions, or if you want to move an email earlier in the flow
Mm-hmm.
because it's performing really, really well. So let's pull that from position 3 to position 1. Now all
Mm-hmm.
of a sudden you have email 3, email 2, email 1. Like, don't
Mm-hmm.
do that to yourself. Just name it the thing that it is, or like with some kind of structured naming convention to give yourself a hint of what it is. So yeah.
Absolutely. And that's like in addition to naming conventions, like that's the value of like adding like comments or codex to things. So like if you're not using a naming convention, so like let's start with that so I don't dive us down another rabbit hole. But if you're not using one, like honestly it's not that complicated to create one. And like there's three main components that you need to really have and you can build this however you want. First thing is what is this? The second part of it is what does this belong to? And the third part of it is when did I last touch it?
I like
And
that one.
sorry?
I like the when did you last touch it? HubSpot does capture all of your last edited date. It can be helpful to see it.
Exactly. So like it's really easy to do that. And so I know with one of the pages, like one of the things I'm working on is like a prompt education course. And so every single page is naming convention is, like one I built this morning was context and prompting, and then it's related, and then the second part of that is so it's context and prompting, it's related to module 2, and I touched it today. And so it's literally like the page title naming convention for me internally is literally S1, M2, P3. And that's just like it's in section 1, module 2, page 3. And I know exactly what it is. And that's all you need. Something simple.
Yeah, it's straightforward. For things in HubSpot, I like to name it with the function that it serves. And
Yeah.
I just stole this off a blog post somewhere a long time ago, and I love it. So a lot of times you'll see my lists be named ops bar or temp bar or
Yes.
INT for internal bar. Do the same thing in workflows. If it's sending external communications from my workflow, you'll see EXT because then you know if you're messing with this one, there's a good chance that you're going to blow out a whole bunch of emails.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a good way to, keep track of everything. And especially me as a consultant, if I were to come into an account that had that naming convention, I could shortcut like hours of
Mm-hmm.
discovery. Like I would just be able to zip right through that and understand what all of your workflows are doing to run and function.
Definitely. Oh yeah. No, I love that, and yes, I do that too. So I wholly agree.
Yeah.
Your
All right.
number
So
2.
my
Go.
number 2 is not properly managing your user permissions. If you
Oh.
let everybody do everything and you only have super admins in your account, God help you. It's just gonna go off the rails because then
No,
you have
no, no. I
no.
heard this one story about the intern who got hired as a super admin and did only good things.
Said no one ever. I think that it can be difficult, especially when you're in an enterprise account where you have so many granular options. But there's the admin hug on user permissions that everybody should go watch as just like a general background knowledge
Mm-hmm.
course. But it's so important because then you can't end up with people creating lists that don't follow your naming convention, and you can't end up with workflows that are at war with each other just because your salesperson wanted to send one email, they created a property and wrote like send in it.
Mm-hmm.
Like we don't want to end up with that. So if you restrict permissions within reason, I mean, you want to make sure that no one's finding friction within their job. So anytime I make a change, I let everybody know and then say like, let me know if you can't see anything, send me a screenshot, if anything is impacting your flow of work, let's fix it. Like, I will get on a call so fast to make sure that you get what you need. But generally, you want to lock people down as much as you
Mm-hmm.
can just to keep things clean and keep it running. So
Yeah.
that's my number two.
Yeah, and I would add on to that too of just really leaning into that second point of locking people down where if you're not sure, err on the side of being overly secure. It's
Yeah.
much easier to give someone view access to everything than it is to undo a deletion or a send of something that shouldn't be sent because those things can't happen. You can grant someone access to do something later. It's not hard.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So no, that's a good one. So that brings me over to number three, and this one this one may or may not cause like bit of contention, but that's I'm fine with that. And
We're here for it.
that's really it's really just about using the right thing for the right thing. And that means nothing but also everything. Because if you're using your deals stages to manage your tickets or your email campaigns, or you're using or if you're using something else entirely, like a spreadsheet to do all of your like project management. Yes, you got to start somewhere, but like you probably should start with something that's a little bit more dedicated. It's use use the right tool, use the right part of the tool for the thing you want to accomplish. Don't just don't just kind of find the path of least resistance because that is what's going that's going to be what causes you to adopt frivolous software, and then you're going to have three different tools that all do the same thing because instead of spending 2 hours or so to figure out how to do it the best way, you spent 20 minutes to just get it done. And then a few weeks later, you're like, crud, I can't do what I wanted to do because you didn't spend that initial 2 hours that would have probably saved you dozens of hours in the future.
Yeah. I feel like I have so many of the like edge case best practices. So like when you run into something that you can't do or you feel
Mm-hmm.
like you can't do, you now have like 20 options for how to get it done.
Mm-hmm.
And the path of thinking that I always follow in those cases is like, what is going to be the easiest way for someone else to learn this or pick this up? And then because it's going to be me and I'm going to forget what I did a year later.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're going to be like, why isn't this working? And I have to go reverse engineer my own solution.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you build it as simply as possible to begin with, and then maybe leave some notes for yourself because the notes function in HubSpot is kind of hidden. It's becoming more apparent because you get that like floating little thing on the right side.
Mm-hmm.
I've started using that quite a bit, especially
Mm-hmm.
if I'm doing something really bizarre because I've run into some roadblocks. Then I just leave myself notes for why I'm doing it that way. But I totally agree with you. Like, if you figure out what the rules are so you can break them, figure out what you have out of the box so that you can then build on that and customize. Because I always say that HubSpot is trying to help you. Like, under the hood, there are a lot of automations, there's reporting that it feeds into. If you use the thing as it's presented as best you possibly can, it makes your life so much easier.
Mm-hmm.
Because as they release updates, like think about the lifecycle stage change dates.
Mm-hmm.
We get the new date entered, date exited, time and stage properties that rolled out, I don't know, last year sometime.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're sunsetting the date became properties, I think at the
Mm-hmm.
end of this year. I abandoned those a while ago because the date entered and exited is so much better anyway. But that is one example where if you have a custom set of life cycle stage dates, in addition, which we often need, there are a lot of cases where you do actually have to build those out so that they're editable, especially if you're doing imports or migrations. But if you're building that, it would be better if you didn't have to, because now that transition for the date became into date entered is just going to happen for you. You don't have
Mm-hmm.
to do anything. And if you have your own custom thing built on top of that, again, sometimes you need it, but that's not going to change. That's not going to be reflected with that kind of shift that HubSpot is making for you. So if you use the thing as it's intended, your life is so much easier and you could take advantage of the new shiny toys down the road.
Exactly. And honestly, if you're not sure where to begin, See point number two. Just like just add something into the naming convention because ultimately, like, that's going to be internal facing only, and then people on your team know what this thing is.
Yep.
Or if you're creating a property, there's a nice little dialog box that you're probably skipping very quickly that explains what this property is and how it's used for. There's the same thing for objects, there's the same thing for events, there's the comments, like you mentioned within workflows, same stuff for emails, landing pages, you name it. Something is probably there to explain contextually what this is and why it's important.
Yeah, for sure. All right, I've got a number
Yours.
three. Have you done two or three?
That was my third.
That was your third. We're zipping through this. Maybe we'll just keep going.
That's fine. Yeah, we can just ramble all day, right?
My number three is setting a standard of procedure for importing. So when
Oh,
you are importing lists, you lose so much context for what it is and where it came from. If you have a naming convention, great, you've left yourself some breadcrumb clues. But when it comes down to it, you should hopefully have some properties that will aggregate your sources. So when you look at the HubSpot out of the box sources, this is another place where like it exists and you probably use it, but there are other ways that you might need to build on top of that. You get latest source, record source, and original source. Those will all just say offline import when you import. And then some of them give you the import name. So again, if you have a naming convention, it gives you a clue. But when you want to look back and say like, how did our events perform against, say, webinars? Then you'll need something to help you tie that together. So if you set up those properties as dropdowns or checkboxes, because we need structured data wherever we can, then you can build that into a more clear taxonomy to roll everything up for you, and then document it. Just create
so
templates,
people use it.
star them, use it. Maybe that's my number four is like make sure that you have
Train
kind of an
people.
internal wiki.
Yeah,
But
not even training people, just like talk about it, socialize it, and let people know it exists.
yeah, I personally I love Notion. We all know this. But I love creating Notion workspaces with my clients. So we have every single workspace ends up looking like this. We have documentation at the top. And that is like anything that we are setting as a standard or needs to be known gets created as a page, gets a template linked, gets something in that top section. So when you get into that workspace, it's the first thing you see is like, here's how to follow the rules. Then it has a sort of like notes brainstorming space. And then I have a Kanban board for whatever we're working on and have things associated to that. So it turns out to be a really great collaborative workspace when we all use it. But at least for me, it's pulling all their documentation into one place. So if I need to remind them kindly that things should be used or followed, at least have it in a place I can get to quickly.
Yeah, no, and there's so much that can be said about that, and like I would roll up just like a couple. Well, I have a couple thoughts on that. Firstly, it's like, to your point of like augmenting how you're doing how you're enhancing the data. It's like you have the very add lead source and keep that simple where it's like, webinar or event or whatever. But if you need to get specific about, okay, what specific event did I create? Just create a drop down that's literally just called conferences. And anytime you attend a new conference, you just add a new drop down item as that conference item. And you can have that, then whenever you do the import, you're going to pull in that information because you're adding that property. If you have a badge scanner at the event that collects everything via a HubSpot form, you could have that property be hidden on the form that automatically populates, and then all that data is preserved for you. So like, please do that. Like, there's so many ways to actually solve these challenges that are just frequently overlooked.
I want to put like a big warning label over what you just said though, because
Yeah.
there are so many ways to do it, and lead source in some cases is overly simplified. Sometimes you need latest lead source. Sometimes it makes more sense to create a custom object and associate it to that event. Sometimes you're using an event platform that links into HubSpot. Campaigns, I'm slowly coming around on in HubSpot because you can associate more things now. I think the reporting is still lacking.
It's
So I think product
it's getting
managers
close to the point of
want some
basically not
feelings.
needing the custom properties anymore because you can just throw a campaign to it or a tag, which is
Right.
awesome.
Yeah, I want to disassociate UTM campaigns from
Yeah,
HubSpot campaigns, but we'll get there. We'll get there.
we're
Baby
getting there.
steps. So like that's one option. There are a lot of ways to structure it that really just depend on your business and your reporting needs. And
Mm-hmm.
I try to build for like a 5 year timeline.
Mm-hmm.
So 3 to 5 years, we'll probably outgrow something and need to revisit it. If we can, solve for what's happening today and give ourselves just a little bit of runway, then that's the right kind of window. Like we were talking about earlier, you can create a property, like an SDR could create a property that says send. That's solving for today and not tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely not for 5 years. But if you can think about that time window, I feel like you end up with a scenario that's workable for most of your team.
Yeah. Yeah, which boils back to the point of just like, we use importing as an example here, but it boils down to a word, and that word is actually multiple words, and it's SOP. Just
Yes.
standard operating procedure. Doesn't matter what it is, create it, write it down, circulate it, and update as needed. And it, a systemized way of doing things will save you so much sanity because then you're not having to refer to insert person name here for what is the right way that I should be thinking about this or how do I do that. You can just be like, oh yeah, here's a link for that, and it
Mm-hmm.
has all the information. If you have any questions, come bug me because I'm happy to help otherwise.
Yeah.
uh, but that's so hugely valuable.
Yeah.
uh, yeah.
Funny story. I didn't know what SOPs were until like a year and a half ago. I had
Yeah,
written many
there's
a checklist and many a guide, but I had not learned the term SOP until very
yeah.
recently.
And SOP, for those who don't know, standard operating procedure. Like that's all it means. And honestly, just using that, a good thing to do internally for every organization is call it a dictionary, call it a jargon library, call it lexicon, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Create an appendix of your frequently used what's the word? Acronyms.
Vocabulary.
You
Acronyms.
frequently use acronyms. Doesn't matter if they're industry standard or unique to your business. Just take them as they are and assume that the people who are using these things don't know what they mean. They're fresh out of university. They've never heard this tool. They've never heard this acronym ever in their lives, and you need to provide them context. And then just have that page be accessible from everywhere in
Mm-hmm.
your knowledge base.
Yeah.
I cannot tell you how much help that will be.
Pin it on Slack, send it to your new hires. If you don't have a centralized knowledge base, like fine, star documents in Google Drive. Like whatever
Yeah,
it is, just get it out there as much as you can. I feel like
exactly.
that's our core message today. Is like
Yeah, and honestly,
set a
like,
standard.
yeah, and it boils down to keeping it simple too, because it's like to your point, and I know I'm going off on a tangent here. It's like if you need an internal knowledge base, you can literally just do like a Google Doc now can be an
Mm-hmm.
internal knowledge base because you can have different tabs within that doc,
Yeah.
and there you go. Like it's really easy to build a very simple but very functional knowledge base.
But you should probably use Notion because it's great.
Yes, there are definitely better tools for it. But yes, using Notion's not a bad one. Using like HubSpot Knowledge Base, if you have
Very
Service
good.
Hub, is also a fantastic one. Or if you don't want to pay for either one of those, you want to go for something really cheap, bare bones, and you don't mind using Markdown, Wikidot actually makes a fantastic knowledge base software that's really easy to set up. Um, well,
Information.
I say easy to set up. In terms of actually building it, you need a little bit of developer knowledge, but honestly, it uses Markdown, which is, if you've never used Markdown, it's basically a very simple person's use of HTML.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
That's what LinkedIn
yeah,
is
I
now.
digress.
That is the story of our lives.
Yeah.
Do you have any parting thoughts on like absolutely never ever do this? If you had to tell someone who is new to HubSpot and they're starting to click around, and if there's one thing that they click, go, you would be like, don't touch that.
Don't touch the bloody publish, send, save blah blah insert thing here that literally does a version control unless you're 1,000% sure. I don't care what it is. Just ask yourself the double why. Why am I doing this? And then ask why to the answer to your question there. And if you're able to do that effectively and succinctly, great, you're probably fine. But if you find yourself fumbling, and it's actual fumbling, not my definition of fumbling, because I just English is hard. Then you probably should consider holding for right now.
Yeah, that's a good one, actually. I really like that because I've gotten into so many workflows where workflows have versions, which is super helpful. And you can kind of roll things back. And I think lists even have versions now too, which is super helpful. Maybe I'm making that up. I don't
I
remember.
don't think they. I don't. Static ones might. Active ones do. Active ones don't. I don't think, unless
Okay, let me see.
I misread it.
I'm gonna go look that up after this call.
Yeah, I don't
Um,
remember actually.
Yeah, because I've had many cases where, someone will make a change and then be like, I don't know what happened. Everything just exploded. It's
Hmm.
like, all right, well, let's go figure out why. And it's very easy to see like they did a small change and hit save, did another small change and hit save. It's sort of the reverse of what we learned growing up, where it was like always save your documents so that you don't lose
Hmm.
anything when your computer crashes, because that happened a lot when I was
Hmm.
in elementary and middle school. Computers crashing were just like part of your day.
That's normal. That's standard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It happens way, way, way less now.
Yeah.
But we still have to like unlearn that skill when you have things like workflows where you'll have multiple
Right.
versions and it will go live when you hit save. Um, yeah, that's a really good tip, actually.
Yeah.
Good one.
And honestly, if you're not sure how to do version control or you don't have a version control, there's a very simple way to do it. Take a screenshot and have that
Yeah.
screenshot be on a shared something and just flag, hey, I'm changing this thing. Here's what it was in case anything breaks. That's
Yeah.
all you realistically need to do for a very simple quick rollback plan. Because then you
Yeah.
know exactly what to fix. Yes, it may take you a little bit of time, but you know how to fix it.
Yeah, exactly. I've done that a lot. Or you open a second tab and just don't save anything until you know what's
Yep.
happening.
Yep, I love the second tab approach. Second tab, same exact content, and then
Yeah.
you pray that your browser doesn't crash while you're
Yeah.
working on the thing because you want all that data to be saved in your cookie jar.
Yeah, I do that a lot in workflows. If I
Hmm.
want to make sure it doesn't publish because it's external, you can always turn it off. But
Yep.
um, then because you have so many layers that you can like click into
Hmm.
within the filters and steps and workflows, that's a nice hack.
Oh yeah.
My like big red warning button is create. If you're creating a property, if you're creating a custom object, if you're creating a workflow, go check. Like
Hmm.
that's your two whys or five whys. Like really get deep on, is this necessary? And I had one client where we were having conversations pretty regularly about like, should this be a custom object? And they ended up with like 5 or 6 custom objects. And when we had to make some changes to the team and pare things back, we brought it down to like 1 or 2
That
because
sounds
it just
accurate.
got so out of hand. I mean, I think they were building to like the 10-year plan, not the 5-year plan.
Hmm.
So they definitely would have served a purpose if things went in a different direction. But to plan to that horizon is like almost impossible. You never
Right.
know what's going to happen. They are the exact case in point. So
Oh yeah.
like it was cool because they were bringing more processes and more things into HubSpot, but we were trying to build too many things at once without covering the bases.
Hmm.
Um, but generally, yeah, anytime you hit create, then talk about it, socialize it, you know, grab a thought partner. Um, it could be us, it could be this Procketeer community, like
Hmm.
whatever it is, talk to someone about, I'm thinking about this. Am I missing anything? Is there something else I should be thinking about? Is there another way to do this that might be better? Like, check me on this. I do that
Hmm.
constantly. Like, I'm
Ditto.
I'm supposed to have the answers, but I usually need a panel of experts to make sure that I do have the answer.
Oh, ditto. Yeah,
Yeah.
I use a bot for that all the time. I'm just like, hey, look, you're my rollback planner project manager. I will tell you as I'm doing things, and if anything breaks, I will tell you and then tell me how to fix it. And then it has all the context you need. And it just follows that process. Easy peasy.
This is why I hang out with you, so you can teach me all the things about AI that I would never think to do.
Woo-woo.
and because I like hanging out with you. Not just
Oh
because
yeah,
you.
it's always fun. So yeah, this is great. I love having these chats.
Yes, I think that's a good stopping point for today. We'll figure out our holiday plans. I don't know that I want to show
Yeah,
this up on Christmas Eve, but
I chances are we're probably gonna be off for the next couple of weeks, but if for
yeah,
whatever reason you see a magic pop on, that's fine.
that's us. We're usually pretty spontaneous anyway.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Awesome.
Cool.
Have a good one, everyone.
Take care, all.
I don't know. That was way more fun than usual.
Oh, that's so much more